Hi, my name is Siqi Song. I'm an English language lecturer in Hubei University of Technology in China and now a visiting scholar in the George Washington University. My topic for this presentation is incorporating moral education in the online EFL classes. So let's look at my presentation. And I'm going to share screen with you. Okay. Okay, so this presentation would tell you something about an EFL class in Chinese university, which tries to teach students not only the English knowledge, but also help them to build up their values and become better citizens for the future. Because the school moved to online during the spring semester in 2020, I got a chance to do this study with my colleagues back in China. And let's get started to look at this presentation. It all started with a warm-up question during the virtual meeting in which the department head asked us what kind of person do you wish your students grow up to be in 5 or 10 years or perhaps even further future. We typed the question and generated a word cloud like this. There are many good qualities we could find in a person, and there are so much that we want our students to achieve. Looking at them closely, we found that our wish for the students were hardly related to how well they learned in the subject we taught, but were more about their personal traits and how they perform when they enter the society. This thought brought us to the idea to study incorporating moral education in English classes. And so this is the background of the study. On the one hand, the study fits into the recent emphasis on the whole person development in the national curriculum in China, which advocates teachers to think about what character strengths and qualities students need and what mindset and thinking skills they will be required in the future. On the other hand, since the school closure in the COVID-19, there had been a lack of motivation in learning and increasing psychological issues for students of all levels. Take college students as an example. A study indicated that about 25% of college students experienced anxiety because of the COVID-19 breakout, which was common for universities in different cities. Here is a survey conducted among 100 first-year undergrad students in the school where I taught. Most of students express different negative feelings towards their learning experience online. Among them, the top negative feelings are conflicts with parents when they stay home for school, feel lost and confused when they stay home for school, lack of communication with peers and friends, overwhelmed with the news on the internet. So this general background brought us to the need of moral education, which can help students establish a more positive worldview and feel less lost. Since the time is limited and it would be really boring to do a long literature review for a video presentation, I would mention some quick facts about moral education and the studies around it. Conventionally, moral education refers to guiding students to distinguish the right and wrong, which influence their beliefs and stances towards people and the world. More fundamentally, it teaches young people to think about the proper behaviors and what sort of people they should be. There were different views to moral education. Generally speaking, on the one hand, there are heated controversies and strong opposition from people who criticize it as brainwashing. As the new literacy theory suggested that literacy practice reflects the dominant values and beliefs, so some researchers pointed out the danger of ideological manipulation of moral education as it tries to put mainstream values on people. On the other hand, others believe schools should be responsible for helping students become mature adults and guide them to be worthwhile persons. And some also mentioned that moral education requires critical distance on tradition, exposure to alternatives, informed and reflective deliberation about how to think and live. So it is actually not contradictory to developing critical skills. Nowadays, moral education was often integrated with the curriculum of social studies and liberal arts. For example, in China, it is often integrated in curriculum of subjects such as Chinese, history, or politics. Moral education has been only tried recently in English language classes. For example, Shaban developed a framework for moral education in EFL class. Feng also suggested that teachers should guide students to analyze the moral issues in textbooks. There was not much study about incorporating moral education in college EFL classes and how it would influence students' beliefs and behaviors. So in this presentation, we try to answer the following questions. First, can we incorporate moral education in college EFL classes? Second, how do values developed in EFL classes influence students' behaviors and beliefs? Third, how do online learning environments shape students' moral beliefs? Here's a brief introduction about the context of the study. The study was situated in a first-year EFL reading and writing class in a university in the central south of China during the spring semester of 2020 when the schools moved to online instructions. The class had 13 students and one teacher. It took place online via Tencent meeting twice a week, which was a virtual conference tool similar to Zoom. The data collection and analysis process was not complicated. I interviewed the teacher about teaching procedure and how the class was going. There were also 6 students who participated in the individual interviews about their learning experience, what they have gained, and reflections about learning materials. Then, students' weekly journals, which they posted in their online group, and their discussion in group chats were collected. Later, in the data analysis, I established categories and subcategories within each data and then compare across data. Finally, beliefs about moral education in EFL classes were generated. The result of the study could be analyzed according to the 3 initial questions proposed at the beginnings. First, we can incorporate moral education in EFL class. The answer is yes. We can incorporate moral education in college EFL classes through drawing connections between textbook materials and real-life issues, intercultural comparison, and reflection around social issues. According to the interviews with the teacher, there were several ways she tried to integrate moral education into her classes. For example, she talked about connecting the textbook reading about Audrey Hepburn, who devoted her life to humanitarian work, to the doctors and nurses working during the COVID-19 for students to reflect on. She also talked about sharing links about how media in different countries depicted similar events, and then students made comments and decided on which they would believe in. Though comparing the practices in different cultures, students thought about what is the best practice for them, she said. Furthermore, she mentioned that after class finished reading comprehension of the task, the theme of the reading would be connected to a hot social issue, and students enjoying reflecting on these topics rather than talking about the text appreciation of the reading. Here was actually an example lesson from the class. You could pause the video for a while and take a look if you like. This example class was a reading and writing class focusing on writing personal profiles. Basically, in the class, there would be a warm-up section related to real-life events, and students used English to reflect on these events. Then there will be a learning activity that focused on reading comprehension of the textbook article and discussion on the writing techniques. Afterwards, there was post-reading discussions and presentations in which students expounded on the theme of the reading and talked about the people and things in their own lives. For homework, students also wrote journals reflecting on the stories of people they discussed in classes. So from this example lesson, we could see how the teacher infused moral education into both the materials and the activities of the class. The second question is, how do values developed in EFL classes influence students' behaviors and beliefs? The answer is that students were impressed by the values developed through learning. They felt they had a deeper connection with the target language because learning it changed the way they look at and do things. Yet some students also felt discouraged by being told what to believe. For instance, students mentioned in the interviews that they felt more grateful about the angels in their lives after learning the story of Andrew Hepburn units. They mentioned benefiting from discussion and feeling more respectful for medical workers. One student also said that he feels the deep influence of English class because it was not just learning some words and grammar, but it changed his mind and made him feel he's more mature. However, there were also students complaining that he disliked those discussion and expansion on the themes of the reading because she had different opinions with most of the classmates and she felt uncomfortable talking about her real thoughts. From this, we could learn that EFL class is a good place for moral education to take place because as students build connection with the language, they will feel more impressed about the values they discovered in language learning. However, we should make sure that it is not about forcing them to think in a certain way, but more about guiding them to find a proper values and worldviews. Finally, to answer the last question, how do online learning environments shape students' moral beliefs? The result was that the lack of in-person communication made it harder for students to distinguish the abundant information and views online. However, they are on their way learning to think about what is right or wrong and whom they wanted to be in the future. Here were some evidences from the data. For example, in the group chats of the class, there were often debates about different materials students found online. Sometimes they just had contradictory findings, which suggested that it was hard for them to distinguish which one is more reliable. Besides, in their weekly online journals, students could comment on each other's ideas, discuss popular issues, and read various different views. It showed that there were more information inputs than offline classes. Students also expressed their feelings towards this virtual format of learning. For example, these here, these excerpts, interviews, they were students' words. One student said she felt awkward when there is a really different point of view from her best friend online. When she realized that this is reality and she still chose to be herself. There was also a student mentioning that he felt the English class is fun and enlightening because he got to think about some complex things which are important to his future. It is as meaningful as knowledge for him. Additionally, one student also indicated that while used to be easily influenced by others, she felt more confident in English classes because by writing weekly online journal to express herself, she is now more comfortable and capable of making her own judgments. Reflecting on these results, here are some implications we got. First, language learning is more meaningful and impressive when one could get life lessons from it. It made people feel the language is part of themselves if it actually influences them in some ways. Secondly, moral education does not mean hindering critical thinking. It is a critical in a way that it encourages making judgment, finding the best way, and exploring one's own worldview. However, it also ensures that students are guided to become better thinkers instead of developing into some stubborn or extreme individuals. The interactive nature of the language education is great for incorporating moral education. Third, it is important to guide students on their way learning to think about what is right or what is wrong and whom they want it to be in the future. Language teachers not only teach language, but also shape students' thoughts through the use and practice of the target language. Now, as I look back to the very first question about what kind of person do you wish your students to be, I wanted to change these questions towards what kind of person do students want to be in the future. Perhaps moral education could make the answer clear for students because through guiding students to reflect on the social values embedded in language learning, students become more aware of their worldviews and think about how they can make the world a better place. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for watching it to the end. I would be happy to discuss with you about further thoughts relating to it. So you can send emails to me and tell me if there are any questions that you have.